Wabasha, Great Peace. This is going to be my last video for a while, if not my last video in forever. I just want to touch on the grasping points that's kind of captivated a lot of people who are starting to become believers, knowers, who are following the teachings of Moses, or who are following the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, Abdullah Prophet Muhammad, or Sheikh Noble Drew Ali. So I'll just start off right here. I want to touch on the Moroccan American Treaty of Peace and Friendship from 1787. So we're going to get into it. And I just want to make it very compelling to the person who hasn't done extensive study, rather who is just coming into this information and who is going to put it to use, as many have, and further, not only declaring their nationality, but declaring their sense. All right, so we're going to end with the Medina Constitution. Now let's start here. We declare that both parties have agreed that this treaty, consisting of 25 articles, shall be inserted in this book and delivered to the Honorable Thomas Barclay, the agent of the United States now at our court. With those aberrations it has been made, and who is duly authorized on their part to treat with us concerning all the matters contained in. Thomas Barclay, they're saying he is honorable, and they're saying he's been delivered this treaty. He's been delivered this article, this book. So they're basically further giving him pleasantries. So as you can see, the people who signed off in power to this treaty, they were not taking on this Hebrew name. And as you know, Hebrew and Muslim have a long, extensive history with one another, being that Muslim protected those commonly known as Jews, and also the Jews' partners, the Jewish. All right, let's go to 2. If either of the parties shall be at war with any nation whatever, the other party shall not take a commission from the enemy nor under their colors. So you can see this article right here is not being followed as we see it today. You have the United States warring against many Muslim countries, and they're replacing these Muslim countries as self-proclaiming themselves to be in their slot as being the creditor. All right, so let's read this part again. If either party shall be at war, so who are the parties? You have Morocco and you have the United States of America. Morocco being the oldest nation. All right, so the other party shall not take a commission from the enemy. All right, so you can see pretty much the United States is notorious around the world for basically taking wealth by commission from their original inhabitants who brought them into government, the Moors, spelled Mores. All right, so clearly, and they're still taking on the debt of their own nation by signing off on corrupted, if you will, corrupted trades, as far as like doing business with some of the larger nations like China, India, and also Pakistan, who do a lot of the wilting as far as the um, importing of clothes or silks. And 3, it says, if either of the parties shall be at war with any nation whatever, and take a prize belonging to the nation, and there shall be found on board subjects or effects belonging to either of the parties, the subject shall be set at liberty and effects returned to the owners. And if any goods belonging to any nation with whom either of the parties shall be at war, shall be loaded on vessels belonging to the other party, they shall pass free and unmolested without any attempt being made to take or detain them. Seen here, this basically covers what we see with Jews or blacks or Muslims, Moors. We see these people, they travel unmolested on roads until they're caught in a huckleberry with a scavenging cop or a commercial mercenary under international glossary, international standard. We see them go molested when they run into these uniformed detainers. All right, so if you are driving without a license on land or on sea, your property being your mode of conveyance, or your ship, your vehicle, your motor vehicle, is going to be towed. Your ship is going to be wrecked. So you on sea, you can be attacked by a submarine or on a incoming ship. You can basically cause a wreck. You can be blown to smithereens, if you will. And we see so far is on land, we see black men, they get shot, and we see black women, they get manhandled or wrestled to the ground and maced or beaten. We see that a lot between aliens, or I should say, pilgrims. We see a lot of fighting between the two parties, and their effects are never returned, and they're never set at liberty. Okay, let's go to 4. A signal or pass shall be given to all vessels belonging to both parties, by which they are to be known when they meet at sea. And if the commander of a ship of war of either party shall have other ships under his convoy, the declaration of the commander shall alone be sufficient to exempt any of them from examination. So basically that means when you are in traffic, you're at a stoplight and a commercial mercenary has the right of way, right to go, or you passing by and you pass a stop sign, which is artificial, because counties, they are basically under siege, and basically we're not seated in county, so we don't have without day. And when we see things like this, we're not supposed to be stopped when we're in cars. You know, we're not supposed to be pulled over for suspicion of driving drunk, suspicion of anything. We're supposed to be exempt and sufficient. So that's the thing that we don't see. All right. 5. If either of the parties shall be at war and shall meet a vessel at sea belonging to the other, it is agreed that if an examination is to be made, it shall be done by sending a boat with 2 or 3 men only. And if any gun should be fired and any injury done without reason, the offending party shall make good on all damages. All right, so that's where we hear Sharia comes in, Sharia law. So like here, if there's 2 parties in disagreement and they're at war, there are supposed to be 2 neutral parties that come and basically make sure that a treaty pact is not broken. So this is something we see among Indians in Chicago, where shootouts take place on highways, shootouts take place in the middle of streets. There's no clearing, there's no examination. It's just all out savagery. And this type of incidents happen and occur very frequently. And this is a continuation of the Toledo Wars, the St. Lawrence Wars, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So this hasn't been carried over on the appropriate level, as far as like making sure that it doesn't boil over. So it has boiling over, and it's unfortunate because we're basically breaking our own treaty pacts, and not just the Pilgrim. All right. And also, I just want to say before I go to 6, the American and the Morocco is basically one and the same. They're cousins. So you have the Americans who want to help the Brits, and you have Morocco who want to help the other side of the Brits. So it's pretty much the same thing. Morocco being with the French and America being with the British. All right, so 6. If any more shall bring citizens of the United States or their effects to His Majesty, the citizens shall immediately be set at liberty and the effects restored, and in like manner, if any more not a subject of these dominions shall make prize of any of the citizens of America or their effects and bring them into any of the ports of His Majesty, they shall be immediately released, as they will then be considered under His Majesty's protection. All right, so that's clearly saying more have leeway, and citizens of the United States they're trying to get to where the Moors are. All right. If any vessel of either party shall put into a port of the other and have occasion for provisions or other supplies should be furnished without any interruption or molestation. So I touched on this in the previous video. If you have a container with a supply of vehicles for the citizens here in America or for nationals of the empire, they should be able to get what they need to get without being taxed. So this is something that we don't see. We often see the 99% being taxed and the 1%, or who knows. They have their own demons. Because the further you go, you know how that goes. Let's go to 8. If any vessels of the United States shall meet with a disaster at sea and put into one of our ports to repair, she shall be at liberty to land and reload her cargo without paying any duty whatever. So this is like saying you're paying for an insurance on a vessel that is on land, and it breaks down, and you have a blockage or something like that. Um, Another government or your government or a third government, they're supposed to make sure that uh, you get your repairs. We don't see this a lot. It has advanced to the part where if something like this does occur, you are hit with a duty attacks. You are hit with penalties. So um, you are put in harm's way in that sense. So that article also is being breached. Now let's go to 9. If any vessel of the United States shall be cast on shore on any parts of our coasts, she shall remain at the disposition of the owners, and no one shall attempt going near her without their abrogation, as she is then considered particularly under our protection. And if any vessel of the United States should be forced to put into our ports by stress of weather or otherwise, she shall not be compelled to land her cargo, but shall remain in tranquility until the commander shall think proper to proceed on his voyage. So that goes hand in hand with the principles that we see in immigration, as far as illegals crossing the southern borders. All right, so basically, this is dealing with property, and it's dealing with investment. So you can pretty much surmise there. You're supposed to be protected at all costs. So we're not even talking about the immunities that nationals have. We're just talking about the United States and their citizens. All right, so let's go to 10. If any vessel of either of the parties shall have an engagement with the vessel belonging to any of the Christian powers within gunshots of the port of the other, the vessel so engaged shall be defended and protected as much as possible until she is in safety. And if any American vessel should be cast on shore on the coast of Wadun or any coast where thereabout, the people belonging to her shall be protected and assisted until, by the help of God, they shall be sent to their country. All right, so this is dealing with approachings in the lands that obviously were being encroached upon. All right, so you can see His Majesty is trying to prevent catastrophes. He's trying to prevent breach of peace. He's trying to make sure that, no one is brought to their own demise, because if you look at America back then, as we know, or the Maghreb, Morocco, Medina was different back then. All right. You're talking about more people being on the land who were of our stock, and they were doing God knows what under all type of religion protections. So His Majesty is saying, make sure that, the person of the U.S. is not coming upon any type of bloodshed that may occur. So he's trying to protect them and warn the people who are on the land, not to do these things. Because, if you believe in a certain type of religion and you are carry it out under strict policy, things can get gruesome very quick. All right, so let's go to 11. If we shall be at war with any Christian power and any of our vessels sail from the ports of the United States, no vessel belonging to the enemy shall follow until 24 hours after the departure of our vessels. And the same regulations shall be observed toward the American vessels sailing from our ports, be their enemies Moors or Christians. All right, so He's trying to prevent things from occurring that shouldn't occur. He's trying to keep peace. All right, so he's very um, pretentious in that. All right, let's go here to 12. If any ship of war belonging to the United States shall put into our ports, she shall not be examined or any pretense whatever, even though she should have fugitive slaves on board, nor shall the governor or commander of the place compel them to be brought on shore under any pretext, nor require any payment from them. Again, he's trying to keep peace. All right, so we can see all of this has been flipped and turned over. Everything that the Emperor of Morocco was trying to keep instilled back then, Sidi Muhammad, um, the people in power over us right now who are holding us to servitude, they're doing the opposite of every article 25 counted being waged. They're waging a war against us. So they're not keeping these articles in fact. All right, here it goes. If a ship of war of either party shall put into a port of the other and salute, he shall be returned from the fort with an equal number of guns, not with more or less. All right, so this goes along with what we see in culture today with our people. Whenever we see each other, we signal each other with respect, and we don't do each other a bad deal. As far as hand pocketing, pickpocketing, we don't do that to each other. We keep our culture and faith intact. Let's go to 14. The commerce with the United States shall be on the same footing as the commerce with Spain, or as that with the most favored nation for the time being. And their citizens shall be respected and esteemed and have full liberty to pass and repass our country and seaports whenever they please without interruption. All right, so you can see people coming across the board, and then Joe Biden saying he doesn't want to build a wall and everything. So you can see this right here in 14. You can kind of equate the politics right now. You can see a remnants of them trying to restore the treaty because, again, people are coming across the border. And as His Majesty said, we want to make sure we hold the people that are coming across in high esteem. All right, so let's go to 15. Merchants of both countries shall employ only such interpreters and such other persons to assist them in their business as they shall think proper. No commander of a vessel shall transport his cargo on board another vessel. He shall not be detained in port longer than he may think proper. And all persons employed in loading or unloading goods or any labor whatever shall be paid in customary rates, not more and not less. All right, so they're basically saying even the people who are laboring have certain privileges and immunities on top of immunities because they're being paid by custom rates, and they're also not being taxed as far as not being able to get what is coming in through the ports. And also it is saying that, let's see here, what does it say? Interpreters. All right, so we see a lot of black people today, they don't necessarily take their immunities to their full capabilities. So you have a person who still thinks they're black by choice or by force. They don't necessarily say like I speak this language or that language or that language, even though they do. But to their cognition, they don't realize that they do. So they just kind of go along with what's forced upon on them since adolescence is that they speak English. And again, that's not true. All right, because everybody in America, being there Aboriginal or how can I say it, indigenous, they come from a certain area with a street which they have shares in through customary law. So you live in Atlanta and you live on a street called Martin Luther King. You speak Lutheran. You don't necessarily speak English. All right, so that's like two different things. Like if you Baptist or you Christian or you Jehovah Witness, you definitely don't speak English. All right, so where are we? 16. In case of a war between the parties, the prisoners are not to be made slaves, but to be exchanged one for another, captain for captain, officer for officer, and one private man for another. And if there shall prove a deficiency on either side, it shall be made up in the payment of 100 Mexican dollars for each person wanting. And it is agreed that all prisoners shall be exchanged in 12 months from the time of their being taken, and that this exchange may be effective by a merchant or any other person authorized by either of the parties. All right, so this article is basically saying authorization. It's saying payment. It's saying captain for captain. All right, so whenever you see someone get arrested, be it they're African American, black, and they go through the county and they get sent up or downstate or across state to a prison to do a stint or a bid. Basically, what you're looking at, they're supposed to be in exchange for inventory. All right, I'm not saying humans are inventory, but we're dealing with human trafficking. So someone on that side gets arrested, someone on the other side is supposed to, take a head roll as well. All right, so here we have it also says that the nations were trading in Mexican dollars. So why are we trading in Federal Reserve notes when we're supposed to be trading in Mexican dollars? All right, so let's go to 17. Merchants shall not be compelled to buy or sell any kind of goods, but such as they shall think proper, and may buy and sell all sorts of merchandise, but such as are prohibited to the other Christian nations. That's deep. So what do we see in communities that is mainly inhabited by Afro-Americans, right? We see them being sold everything but the holy name of God. They're being sold cigarettes. They're being sold GMO foods. They're being sold poisons in the form of tar, like gum, candies, such as, suckers and stuff like that. And we also see like they're being sold liquor. They're being sold pork. All right. So if you have religious protection, it's hyphenated, Christian nations, that's the going to say Muslim nations, Jewish nations. So if you have those type of protections, like, let alone, the people that's coming in from other countries who can't speak a lick of Lutheran or whatever language that's being spoken in a particular territory, they're not supposed to be selling this stuff to you. All right, because it's against your religious protectorate. All right, let's go to 18. All goods shall be weighed and examined. All right, so you can't weigh a piece of paper. It's no value. So if you're weighing something and you're examining it, you're supposed to get a fair exchange for it. All right, so we know a grain back then, as far as silver, was maybe 300 grains. All right. So like silver, that's lawful. All right, that's lawful kind. All right, before they are sent on board, and to avoid all detention of vessels, no examination shall afterwards be made, unless it shall be first proved that contraband. So what are you bringing into this country? Is it deemed contraband? Let's go on. Have been sent on board, in which case the persons who took the contraband goods on board shall be punished according to the usages and custom of the country, and no other person whatever shall be injured, nor shall the ship or cargo incur any penalty or damage whatever. So that's the state. Under any circumstance, if you bring something into the country that's not supposed to be here, you're supposed to be punished according to the usages and custom of the country. And it goes on to say, no other person, whatever, shall be injured, nor shall the ship or cargo incur any penalty or damage, whatever. All right. All right. So. All right. Let's go to 19. No vessel shall be detained in port on any pretense whatever, nor be obliged to take on board any article without the consent of the article commander, who shall be at full liberty to agree for the freight of any goods he takes on board. So that's what we're seeing right now. Everybody think Joe Biden is running the country, and obviously you can fall quick into that bubble of thinking that if you're not paying attention to what's going on in your peripheral. So the Secretary of Defense, he's been in the news a lot. So you can pretty much gist that him and his cabinet of thinkers, they're pretty much summarizing the plans and putting people here in this position, putting people here in that position, doing side deals. Like those are the people. I believe his name is Lloyd Austin the third. So those are the people that's really exchanging hands in the background. And Joe Biden, he's just in the front, giving hints to what's going to be taking place in the few years. So he's in the older category. He's very old. So you can pretty much think something's going to happen major with the healthcare system. So I would say pay attention to that after his presidency. 19, no vessel shall be detained in port. Did I just read that? All right, I think I just read that. Let's go to 20. If any of the citizens of the United States or any persons under their protection shall have any disputes with each other, the consul shall decide between the parties, and whatever the consul shall require any aid or assistance from our government to enforce his decisions, it shall be immediately granted to him. All right, so when you see something like that and it says it shall be immediately granted to him, there shouldn't be any extended or pulling or dire situations where you're being forced to go through this procedure and that procedure to get what it is you need to get in order to sustain a livelihood. Like the idea you have to go to college 6 years in order to get a job that's going to pay you $60K or $70K a year. Like that's ludicrous. That's not something being immediately granted to you. So that's something you're not supposed to be going through, and you can pretty much gather that in that article. Okay, let's go to 21. If a citizen of the United States shall kill or wound a Moor, or on the contrary, if a Moor shall kill or wound a citizen of the United States, the law of the country shall take place, and equal justice shall be rendered the consul assisting at the trial. And if any delinquent shall make his escape, the consul shall not be answerable for him in any manner whatever. All right, so you can see tribes are warring against each other. This tribe wants to help British subjects, and you have the other tribe wants to keep the old values in place. So that's like modernly leftists going against the righteous or the righteous. So those two, you can kind of see that being reflected there. Let's go to 22. If any American shall die in our country and no will shall appear, the consul should take possession of his effects, and if there shall be no consul, the effects should be deposited in the hands of some person worthy of trust. So they're saying Moors have trust. So let's say you die or you become deceased or unsound. All right. This means the peregrinus, the pilgrim, is not supposed to come and divvy up what it is that belongs to you. All right. So you can see this around America. You can see pretty much there may be properties here and there up for probate. There may be a property here up for probate, um, and no one comes and claims it. So a local government comes in, and a local organization, if you will, a local organization comes in and holds it in their trust. That's not supposed to happen. You hear a lot of right wing conservatives say things like, we need less government. And that is true. So things are supposed to be clear cut in situations dealing with trust. You're not supposed to have a corporate body who you can't talk to, you can't touch. They're not supposed to be coming in and making deals on a land that they doesn't belong to them. All right, so it goes on to say, until the party shall appear who has a right to demand them. And we see this with people who claim homes. I'm not saying go out and claim homes that's been vacant, even though you have that right and you have that immunity. I'm not saying do that because a lot of people don't know that they have those privileges and immunities. So the people who are being put in those seats to make sure these laws get carried out, they're not doing their job. So they're not doing their duty. And they're not offering up the right service. So they're going to take you as if you're a bandit. And they're going to paint you in a bad picture to people who don't realize that you are in the right. So that's something that we have to work on, and make sure we put the right people in government to help us get these provisions. Because if we don't carry out these articles, we're going to be behind on schedule, and we're not going to achieve the world governance that we need to achieve on time. All right, so it goes on to say, but if the heir to the person deceased be present, the property shall be delivered to him. And we don't see that happen a lot. We don't see it happen at all, in fact, without interruption. If a will shall appear, the property shall descend agreeable to the will as soon as the consul shall declare the validity thereof. So a consul would be like press. It would be like a sheriff or something like that today. Obviously, they're lacking in their abilities because they don't want to descend what it is. They don't want to descend on what they have to carry over. So you only see them when it's time for elections and stuff like that, and they just give empty promises. So 23. The consuls of the United States of America shall reside in any seaport of our dominions that they shall think proper, and if they shall be respected and enjoy all the privileges in which the consuls of any nations enjoy. And if any of the citizens of the United States shall contract any debts or engagements, the consul shall not be in any manner accountable for them unless he shall have given a promise in writing for the payment of fulfilling thereof, without which promise in writing no application to him for any of the redress shall be made. Right, so we're dealing with debts. All right, so that's briefly going over in the Constitution from 1791 for the United States of the United States. All right. All right, so it's basically saying and we see this, people from other countries, they come here and they are given a clean slate. So they're offered the American dream at the behest of what they may have had going on in their own country. So, hey, that means if you get into debt, you can wipe out your debt. All right. So you're not prejudged. You're given a clean slate when you come here. All right, 24. If any differences shall arise by either party infringing on any of the articles of this treaty, peace and harmony shall remain notwithstanding in the fullest force until a friendly application shall be made for an arrangement, and then until the application shall be rejected. No appeal should be made to arms, and if a war shall break out between the parties, 9 months should be granted to all the subjects of both parties to dispose of their effects and retire with their property. So you can see that's something adults do, and obviously there's no adults around today, because when the stuff like this happens and it's time to disperse, what do you see? And this is something that we're supposed to uphold as nobles. We're supposed to uphold this type of etiquette. We're not supposed to have the last word. We're not supposed to be quick to go to our arms. You hear a lot of people saying, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, where it says right here, like, just grab your property and retire, leave. That goes between cousins too. It's not just the Europeans. The sons and daughters of the Europeans. So we're supposed to separate. All right. But our religious wars have kind of evolved over time. It's not, you don't necessarily see Muslims and Christians fighting. When we do, it's not disguised as over books or anything like that, or that's something they do in the East, and they kind of learned that from us. But we don't do that anymore. So I think it would kind of be comedic if we were to see that, because I think everybody is kind of lost sheep. They're kind of wandering around like no one who this pretext belongs to. They're not following any of that. They don't follow any of the religious laws. The Jews themselves have become Gentiles. All right, so let's see. The treaty shall continue in full force with the help of God for 50 years. We have delivered this book into the hands of the before-mentioned Thomas Barclay on the first day of the blessed month of Ramadan in the year of 1200. I certify that this annex is a true copy of the translation made by Isaac Cardoza Nunez. So there you go. Isaac Cardoza Nunez. You look at that name, you'll be like, oh, that's a Spanish person. They speak Mexican or something like that. Or they speak Spanish, Espanol. Well, you can see right here, he translated this as a certified true copy of the translation, which could be called Spanish, but commonly it's called English. And again, that's not true. Why would you write this? Why would you translate this into English? And the people themselves who are to be known as English are their afterthought. They're not even thought of. Like, this language isn't even equated to him. Like, they're on the bottom of his nation, Morocco. So this is his language. This is Arabic. Like, so yeah, let's go ahead. So you can see, like, people who call themselves Moors, like, they're supposed to be celebrating this document or revising this document every Ramadan, or bringing this up to the ear of the people, because a lot of people don't even know about that document. All right, let's go over here to the Medina Constitution real quick, and I'll close out. And again, this will be my last video in a while, if not forever, because it's pretty clear cut that the information that I've given, it can be used quite frequently. So it's just my thoughts. I'm sure people who will come upon this information will have their own thoughts, and their thoughts will be just as equally yoked as mine. So definitely we should be learning from each other, and not necessarily get caught up in origins, but we should all be focused on our commonality, because we all have a common ancestor throughout the world. All right, so let's come from here at 3. Subsection, what is the subsection 3? Banu Awaf remain in their condition. They pay jointly their previous blood money. Every group ransom their captives. This is carried out in an upright and just manner among the believers. All right, so we don't have believers anymore. Person will steal from you. They'll rob you. They'll kill you and be let off scot-free. So that's also like an afterthought. Let's see here, 11. The believers shall not fail to give just assistance to a debtor among them for redemption money or blood with. No believer shall enter into alliance with the client of a blood money. No believer shall enter into alliance with the client of a believer without the latter's consent. So we know people don't follow this. And again, this is our religious clause. And these are given the most esteem in whatever republic you go to, or every democracy also is supposed to be given equality. But democracies are just ran completely wrong in these ages. This is something you couldn't use if you were to get into a religious battle or a jihad in a place like Virginia. You wouldn't be able to use this. They'll probably put you in a asylum home disguised as like a psychiatry, or they'll evaluate you for sure. So this is something that you will be able to use in like some of the undeveloped governments in the East who rely strictly on like theocrats. Something you wouldn't be able to use in America for sure. All right, so he's basically saying you're supposed to forget a debtor, and like as you can see with Joe Biden's presidency, they have a hard time forgiving people who are just leaving college in their 20s. They have a hard time forgiving them for a debt that was incurred in their most childish state. So like you can just see right now, like they operate off wolf. They operate off animal street. Like they have no contention with devouring a sheep, if they will. They have no contention with that. They'll do it. Okay, the Allah-fearing believers act against those of them who cause an act of injustice or fraud or hostility or harm among the believers. Their hands are all against him, even if he is the son of one of them. All right. So that's self-explanatory. I want to go up real quick. I think I passed it. All right, let's see if I can get there. All right. They are one community to the exclusion of other people. And who are they? United Nations, like we call United Nations. All right, so if you are living in a Muslim state, that would be called a Ummah. And the most prized person would be like a Mahdi or like a Hafiz, someone who actually carries this over into like the most serious of seriousness, the most serious matter. So, all right, so you see here a mention of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. All right, so that equates with the first article. They are one community in exclusion of other people. All right, so they carry themselves as being pillars of the nations. So you have here in the West, you have a people who see themselves as being one family, and they, again, you can see it's just the same thing that's going on right now, right? Like you see a community of people arguing about what they call themselves. Like you have Hebrew Israelites, which would be Jews. You have Muslims, which would be Moors, and you have Christians, which will be Indians. So like they're all fighting over at the exclusion of other people. The only thing that they agree on is that they don't want they don't necessarily want other people intervening on their own separate governance, which would be like pilgrims or immigrants, whether of old or new. So they consider themselves different, separate from particularly those people. And I also carry those values. It's not hate, it's just a reality. You can't be ignorant to what people are actually after, and they'll take your place if you allow them to. All right, so that's just the human mind. The peace of the believers is one. No peace shall be made with the believer apart from another believer when there is fighting in the way of Allah. However, peace must be concluded on the basis of mutual equality and justice. Simple. In every expedition made with us, the parties shall take turns with one another. All right. So that basically means if this person is in Kentucky, this person is in West Virginia, and this person is in Georgia, all right, they're supposed to excuse one another, or basically have hospitality for one another as they see so. So I may be moving to Kentucky. I'm coming from Georgia. All right. They're supposed to welcome me. They may be coming from Kentucky, coming into Georgia. They're supposed to welcome me. So that would be like an expedition. These are different confederacies, which would be colors. And you can see this throughout the medieval time with the heraldry. We all share the same colors. The only thing that apart us is how we pronounce and spell the same word. So Johnson would be Jones. You just spell differently and it sounds differently, but it's the same word. All right, so let's see here. The believers exact vengeance for the blood of one another that is shed in the way of Allah. All right, so that means we serious about how we live and we don't want to mess that up. So what you see go on in other countries as far as animal abuse, disguised as so what and so what. I'm not going to be graphic. Those type of values, those type of customs we don't carry here in America. And you can see people are beginning to sway from the old traditions and values, and they're taking on the customs of old Rome. And that's something that we don't want to do. And the only way we can get those type of things intact, we need to have open dialogue about this information right here that's in front of us. The Allah-fearing believers, muttaqin, are under the best and most correct guidance. And this goes without saying. It's not necessarily the faith in the book. It's more so faith in the focus, I would say. All right, so people who carry over the laws of religion, I would say they're very focused. I think anybody who can remember a surah or who can remember a chapter in a Bible or something like that, who can go over it with reverence. Speaking of a reverend, those are people we hold to high esteem, because they're despite their lower natures, they have in a sense completion about themselves. They can command an audience. They can command respect in that sense. So that's something we need to applaud them for. All right, so 20, no polytheist may grant protection to the property or person of Quranish. Neither shall be protect him against a believer. All right. So that basically says a person who believes in many things, he can't necessarily be able to sway a person who believes in recitation of one thing. So that's close relation to a Quranist. So like that would be like someone, I would say, makes sense of it. That would be like Trump to Obama. All right. And that's like a poor example, but I can easily say like Trump being a communist or something like that. You know, they necessarily wouldn't accept him. You know, if you were of the China Republic, you wouldn't accept him. And if he were to force himself, you know, over a polity like that, or a proletariat, he would be forced in a position where his life would be threatened, because you can't mix beliefs and you can't mix families and you can't mix bloodlines. Like, you can't do that. And we see a lot of people fall for that tactic a lot. And there's, you know, that's just poor strategy as far as war. When evidence has been given that someone killed a believer, then he is killed in retaliation for him, unless the person entitled to revenge is satisfied with blood money. The believers are against him as one man, individual. They must take action only against him. So you can call it street justice. So a lot of this is carried out, but you only see it carried out in like different culture. They call it a hit. And when you talk about mafia, which would be kind of mixed in with the corporate structure of like the United States, that's kind of carried over. All right, so a lot of these things intertwine. And then you also have, again, the street level, which is kind of equated with other levels of understanding, but it's pretty much all the same. All right, so let's go to 22. No believer who understands what is said in this document and who believes in Allah in the last day shall give assistance to a wrongdoer or to give him shelter. If anyone helps him or shelters such a person, upon him be the curse and the wrath of Allah on the day of resurrection. No price of substitute shall be accepted from him. All right, so it's just reiterating. All right, don't mess up what is already good. All right, and we messed up what was already good by going and collaborating with the Lord self on the Lord nature of governance. 23, whenever you differ about anything, it is to be referred to Allah and Prophet Muhammad. All right, so we're giving counsel in this sense. Want to trust our instincts, and this is pretty much what this is saying. If you feel like something is not right, something is not wrong, you are confused about something, give counsel. Go to your church, go to your circle, open your Bible, open your Quran. All right, go to your congregation. All right, seek eldership. Be re-advised. All right. This is what the mosque is for. This is what the synagogue is for. This is what the church is for. The Jews pay a share of the expenses of the believers so as long as they are at war. All right. So we also know in history, the Jews have precedence to Muslims. They are kind of in a situation where they have first say, but given what has taken place throughout history, as far as um, I would say, quickly would be in serious terms. Um, the Jews, they are separate from Muslims in that sense, because the Jews in their travels, they were able to do things at the pace that afforded them what they were able to do in history, whereas the Jews were not. So the Jews were constantly at war or at a subservient position compared to their cousins. And this is also not by mistake, but you know, some communities have more than others, and that's kind of been the sense throughout history. The Jews of Banu Ak are one community with the believers to the Jews, their religion, and to the Muslims to their religion. This applies to their clients and to themselves, with the exception of anyone who has done wrong or committed treachery, for he harms only himself and his family. All right, so that's pretty much going over 24. So if you have a family and they're all Jews and you're Jew, and you have another family next to you, they're all Muslim, and this goes with the competency as far as literacy. Can you put the test of what you already know? Can you build a civilization and actually follow your own laws without drifting away from them? All right. And we see this with Moab, or Lot. Lot, he did things that he wasn't supposed to do. And he basically were put in a position that you would hear people say Jews were put in a position. They wandered, all right? They weren't serious in a sense. So they didn't come to believe in the covenant if they should have. Muslim were like the opposite. They had golden ages. So they differ from Jews in that sense. But again, Jews, they have first say because they're older than Islam. All right, Muslims and Jews were not treated as believers. Rather, they were included in a multi-religious and multicultural community. All right. Let's see here. To the Jews of Banu Harith applies the like of what does to the Jews of Banu Harith. So they're basically saying what families have what remnants as far as acceptance. All right, so they comparing the different tribes, the different families, the different clans. All right, so in this sense, you would need another archive to like see how things kind of took place over time. Like video archive, something that's documented appropriately. The Jews pay a share of the expenses of the believers, so as long as they are aware. A repeat of an article. All right, no woman can be treated as a guest except with the consent of her family. All right, so you can see here, women in pastorship. That's something that wasn't accepted. No protection is to be given to the Quranish or to those who help them. All right, that's 43. Courageous. All right. They help one another against those who attack the Yahirib. Whenever they are summoned to conclude and to accept a peace treaty, then they shall conclude and accept it. All right, so peace is always the last resort of war. All right. Hold on for a minute. He claims revisionist. Quran refers some 1,000 times to believers, but only 75 to Muslims and Muslimin. Commanders. All right. So you can pretty much break down commander and get the word man, so thinker. And we all know that a thinker would be like a person who is pretty much experienced. Everybody respects the thinker. Everybody respects he who is able to manage or manage. All right, so that would be like a father. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's leave off on this note and wrap it up.
By seeking a job, the only thing that he should seek now, since he admits that he's free, and he is free, he's not no more a servitor slave. He's free.
The growing number of Negroes who have achieved prominence in all the fields of this country, economic, the social life, the arts, indicates that there is tremendous progress being made, and the growing middle class of the Negro is tremendous today, with a tremendous purchasing power.
To go for himself and provide him with the necessary means to go for himself, and not say keep petting him around his door with a better suit of clothes.
So you can pretty much listen to what he was saying. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the last great faith inhaler after Noble Drew Ali. You can pretty much see right here. He's outlining everything that's going on right now. He's saying being a message to the black man is to follow your own credence, follow your own goal, follow your own industry. And the last person who was to leave off on this message was Louis Farrakhan. So they pretty much kept everything intact as far as where they were moving to. But obviously things kind of fell off because back then they had a lot more going on as opposed to what's going on right now. On top of the Million Man March that happened in the 90s back at, Washington, D.C. So clearly the last thing he said right there was that, you have all of these leaders in position, and they're all doing this for a seat at the table to get better clothes. Like that's what they're basically doing this for, which would be allotted to like being seen, being on camera, having people say their names and stuff like that. Fame, rubbing up the temple, if you will, massaging of the scalp. So basically, what he's saying is, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, we've been in power before. Like, why are we in power right now? So, like, his words were wise. What he did then was wise, and you can't take nothing from, him or his organization. I'm not a part of the NOI. I never have been. But what I will say is that, what they did then, I have a lot of respect for that, because what I see right now, that's something that it wasn't voluntarily known. Like, the idea that you can accept people into a alma mater that doesn't belong there, it's just, it baffles me, because like now you would see all type of people in the NOI, and it's like it wasn't that way back then. Like everything back then was like black nationalism. Like what you see today is like you got Mexicans in the movement, nothing against Mexicans. You got Asians in the movement, nothing against Asians. But this organization, this upliftment was only supposed to be for the black man and the black woman and the black child. All right. And so Elijah Muhammad coming out of the Moorish movement, being, as some descriptors say, Elijah Poole Bay, who cares? But coming out of that movement, you would have to have been back then. You would have to been there to see what actually took place. Because what he did and what Noble Drew Ali did, that's something that we're not seeing today. There's a huge void that needs to be filled, and I'm not saying we need another one of them, but what I am saying is that we need to get on the same page in the message where they left off at. All right, Noble Drew Ali was dealing with nationalism. He was dealing with bringing people out of that dead state. And that's something that people are reluctant to right now. They're not thinking on that page of uplifting each other. As he said, uplifting fallen humanity. They're not on that page. All right. And so both sides have to take a fault in that, and they have to make sure that they basically, get with the program that needs to be gotten with. Because, again, this information isn't going to be in front of us forever. It's always going to be archived, but who knows how long this information is going to be up. We don't want to be hit repeatedly with the onslaught of harlots shaking their butt and rapping on videos. We don't want to see that. We don't want to be hit with that for the next of the millennial ages. We don't want to be caught up into that algorithm or that rhythm. Like, we don't want to be a part of that. We want to make sure that his message is put in deemed in front of us. Noble Drew Ali message is being deemed in front of us. And I just want to say this before I leave. Noble Drew Ali has footage out there somewhere in the archives, and they're suppressing it for a reason. Because if we know what he was saying back then, because if you look at the books that they say he wrote and written, that he basically prepared, divinely prepared, you really have to think like during that time, people weren't necessarily writing on pads and paper. Like, they were just, you see how my English is, or English, you see how it is, that's described by some. Theirs was much misinterpreted because of how we spoke during that time, coming out of the antebellum South into the Norths, because our migration patterns were very different going back and forth and coastward. You would see on some of the census back then that some of us knew how to write, some of us didn't. Some of us spoke, some of us didn't know how to speak. Some of us used other forms of communication. So, like, you can see this with Elijah Muhammad as well. So when I see things like Noble Drew Ali not having footage out there of him, you got to really question, like, why are they suppressing that information from him? You only see images of him and news clippings. You don't necessarily see him being pointed at a figure and giving a ruah to the audience in the form of a video and audio archive. You just don't see it. It's all suppressed. And I think people need to really start trying to figure out, like, what happened around that time from 1913 to 1933. because it's a reason why they do not want to reinstate our immunities as far as the things that we had back then and our privileges, as far as the gold clause, the silver clause, and also the Bill of Rights. They do not want to reinstate those things. So on that note, I would just say do the math, do the learning, make sure you get with it, understand it, purify it, and bring it to light. And you all be blessed, be wholesome, and take care. Great peace. And real quickly, I just want to end off on this note. I was going over the previous segment in the video, and it hit my memory. Like growing up, we knew about the Frederick Douglass. We knew about the Paul Robeson. We knew about all these different, great pillars. Ralph Bunche, all these people, right? And like we knew about the cabins that we were told to go visit in Illinois, as far as Frederick Douglass and his homestead and stuff like that. But we knew about Marcus Garvey, right? But this is a person who I really took dear to when I was like 13, traveling across Chicago, growing up there. And like I would listen to this audio. It was then back on YouTube. I think what was this around 2006, 2005. This was on the internet, right? And I would listen to this every day when I got out of high school. And while everybody was out standing on the corner, walking around and doing this and that, getting into trouble, like I would be in the house listening to this. And I had a sweater that I went and got custom made. 14 years old. I had his image on the back, and I had on the bottom Shabazz. So anybody who was around back then, I'm not going to say like names and stuff like that, like people who I knew and things like that. When I was in high school, if they remember back then, like if you can pull it through the satellites, like you would see like I had his mug shot on the back of my sweater, and I had on there Shabazz, right? And like all the older guys, they would give me flack. They would be like who is that? Because they thought he was a chief. But I'm like, nah, this Malcolm X. Like imagine a little short 14-year-old guy just walking around with this on his sweater. Like, so the thing that I took from Malcolm X was like, be proud of who you are, have a nationalistic stance, don't ever bite your tongue, and just be very persuasive in your approach and make simple out of everything, because you don't want to be put in a sense where you have to stumble over who it is that you are, and you have to apologize for who you are. You don't want to be that person. And like throughout the trials that were seen with him and Martin Luther King, I favorite his message because the stuff that he said, like it lives on to this day. Like what we know Martin Luther King for, his message was great. Like everything he said, like it holds dear. Like you can take something from it, like it's fruit and everything that, the message that he was trying to get across, as a minister coming out of Georgia, right? And that's the thing that you have to take with you when you hear him deliver a powerful speech like I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. Like, that's the message that you take with you as well. The only thing that I differed with Martin Luther King with this message was that he was inclusive of everybody. And I do remember him saying things like, I may have led my people into a burning house. And so there was some regret there. But, both of them had great messages. And I just think that, like, when you look over the entirety of everything and you try to take out the overall hidden message, is that, we as people have to not necessarily pick a side, but we have to bring what it is that we have to offer and iron it out at the table. Like, we have to be responsible for what we're going to do for ourselves in the future. Because as I'm leading up to this point, like, it just came back to my memory. I've been trying to, get this out. But Europeans, when you think of, white people and their positioning in our daily activities and lives, they're put in front of us to make sure we stumble what it is we're trying to do. Like, they're put in front of us to basically block our daily activities, what we're trying to do. Like, they're put there to block us from doing what we have to do as far as trade. That's what they're put there for. And if we don't recognize that, we're doing ourselves a dishonor and we're doing ourselves a disservice. So if you can just remember that one thing out of what I said, out of this hour, if you can just remember that one thing, Europeans, they're put there to block us from doing our trades. When we walk outside, when we drive outside, when we get on a flight, to another state, we have to get a ticket from them. When they pull us over and they ask us for our ID, we have to have the ID that they printed. When we go to a grocery store and we have to get our almond milk and our berries, we have to make sure that it passed their customs. Like, when we want to grow something in our backyard, we have to make sure that the laws that they made, we have to make sure that they don't cross over with what it is that they want us to do as far as using certain pesticides and things like that. And if we want to sell them, like, we have to make sure we go through their customs. So they're put there to block our trade. So let's just listen to his message real quick, and we'll just end on that note.
Setup, as is represented by the United Nations, each country there has one vote, which means that no matter how wealthy a nation is, it only has one vote. And no matter how poor a nation is, it still has one vote. So the ballot actually equalizes the poor man and the rich man. Back when the United Nations was set up, it consisted largely of white nations, because most of the dark nations were then colonized and went independent. Since the dark nations have gained their independence and have emerged on the scene, today in the UN you have more dark nations who are in a position to vote in a bloc than you have white nations. So that we have a situation now where the grouping together of the dark nations who formerly were colonized has given them enough political power to offset the military power and prestige of these mighty white nations of the West. And it is their support. It is only in the United Nations, where everyone has the ballot, where everyone has equal vote, that the plight of the black man can be given a just hearing, and the weight of the dark world can become down on our side and balance the scale on our side. But whenever you take it into the white man's court, you never will get justice, because the white man is the guilty one who committed the crime in the first place. It's like taking your case from the wolf to the fox to take it to Washington, D.C.
And what he's saying there is, again, whatever dealings that we have with them as instators, as far as legates or legislators, is to our downtrodden. They're not going to benefit us in any reason of a time, any reason of amount, because if they were here to benefit us, they would have already done so. We're talking about people who have programming on TV that's only showing themselves 24/7, 24 hours a day. All right. Meanwhile, they never show your auntie being accosted to the ground when she's leaving out the grocery store by a rent-a-cop. They never show your your father or whoever, your uncle, they never show him being his home being broken into because he didn't pay an extra custom to whatever bill that they have for him. These are the things that they don't show. So again, if they really were on your side, they will let the revolution be televised. And that's something they are not going to allow or not going to do. So Malcolm X, he was a Lincoln. He was a proud man, and he had a lot of honor and respect about himself. And, you know, he respected his people. His end goal was to help his people. So that's the thing that we can admire and respect. So peace and honor. Great peace.